let me introduce you to the story for those that are unaware. Okay? I made a video on it, the Florescent allegations. This is an individual who's being currently accused of coercive rape. Florescent had a relationship that lasted 9 months with another anonymous individual that we only know as Brick. Brick recounted the story about how one morning, Florescent pressured them into sex. I concluded that Florescent is a pretty manipulative and gross individual after going through all of the DMs and all of the documents. They have some pretty gross behavior. And this individual here, by the name of Ash, had apparently come out with a statement with their own experiences in regards to Florescent and their bad behavior. And this is what they have to say. In light of the recent allegations that have been brought up against Florescent, I would like to share my own experiences with her. Trigger warning, mentions of grooming, sexual harassment, non-consensual distribution of intimate images. Now, you might be wondering, grooming? Is this Florescent person a groomer too? Absolutely not the case, apparently, because I read through this document. This document is wild, okay? This document is hilarious. The most insane thing I've seen come up in a story like this. Let's get into the continuation of the Florescent allegations, which, to be clear, there is not an allegation in this document. It's more so a recounting of events. So here we go. We start right here. In 2022, a few months after I turned 18, I became fairly well acquainted with Flor and tried my best to help her leave her shitty living situation, better her mental/physical health, and live a happier life. Unfortunately, I was naive. She manipulated me into a very weird dynamic where I would send DMs that appear predatory out of context. The classic yandere dev. I was the minor manipulated me into doing these things. Classic. I read through this document a while ago. I was so taken aback. Unfortunately, I was naive and she manipulated me into a very weird dynamic where I would send DMs that appear predatory out of context to get her to do things like go to bed at a reasonable time or eat meals. I ultimately did not succeed in steering her life towards a better place. She would later go on to use these messages to slander my name, claiming that I groomed her. Interesting stuff, but ironic considering she was the one repeatedly asking me despite informing her what grooming entailed and stating I wasn't willing to do so. Interesting. So, denying the grooming allegations off the bat. It's funny how these allegations turned into somebody being accused of sexual assault, coercive rape even, to now somebody is like alleging that they themselves were alleged groomers. Which is hilarious to me. It's absolutely hilarious to me. When I came across the recent allegations against her, I was both incredibly disappointed and somewhat distraught. I had not come out with my experiences as I had no desire to get myself involved in drama. Nor did I know that she had a pattern of exhibiting this behavior. Additionally, all I really cared about was her getting to a better place in life, even if it meant my reputation was slightly tarnished. I had sincerely hoped that my experience with Flora was a one-off and that she had matured in these past few years as a person. But what this is like laying out right now is that is more than likely not the case, right? This is what they're attempting to convey here, even though it sounds backward as hell. What they're attempting to convey is that Florescent has always been a pretty gross and sort of mentally disturbed individual, is what they're trying to convey here. Which could probably be taken from this in a way, depending on like what it is that they're presenting here. It could probably be taken from this, right? You could probably infer, based on the information that's about to be laid out, that Florescent is a pretty bad individual in their own right. But, you know, bad has multiple meanings, so, you know, define that as you will. Measure it up as you will. It is evident now that this is not the case, and if anything, she has become even worse of a person since my interactions with her. As such, I believe the right thing to do for me now is to come forward and corroborate Flora's history of sociopathic and manipulative tendencies. Sociopathic might be a bit too extreme. Manipulative tendencies, pretty accurate in this situation, I would agree. As seen in the screenshots below, Flora has a history of repeatedly begging adults to groom her while she was a minor, despite multiple friends and myself telling her about the dangers of grooming. Additionally, during the months in which these events took place, Flora was still in a relationship with her then girlfriend. Which, if you guys remember, in the initial document, Brick, the anonymous victim that came forward, or the alleged victim that came forward, had talked about how they were on an on-and-off relationship because apparently Florescent had cheated on Brick with a 20-year-old woman. Could this be it? Could this be it? I don't know, but it's lining up. It's lining up. Flora would tell me on a few occasions of how she had her ex over at her house, even going as far as to tweet a photo of said ex in her bed without her consent. She would later claim to others that she was trying to break up with her girlfriend during this time, as seen in the screenshot below, whereas in reality, Flora was actively cheating on her. Finally, I am including an assortment of Twitter DMs between my 2 private accounts and Flora's private account. The full, unfiltered archive of every single message has been shared with Carrie and another close friend of mine who can attest to the veracity of the messages contained. I do admit that some of the things I said at the time were highly inappropriate, even if I was essentially manipulated into saying them. Yeah, an adult manipulated by a minor. You as an adult should at least have the bare minimum wherewithal to understand not to reciprocate any of these interactions, right? You should not be able to be manipulated by a minor, somebody that realistically has no power over you, unless you yourself are somewhat of an impulsive weirdo, right? That's not to say that this person is predatory, that this person is a pedophile, but impulses sometimes get the better of people, right? And stuff like this, unfortunately, can happen to individuals who are somewhat impulsive, which these individuals very well could be. I have to be clear. Because a lot of people, when you're reading this document on Twitter, you'll see this on Twitter, you will notice that they're all making fun of this anonymous well, not anonymous poster, because we know who they are, Ash. They're making fun of this Ash person because they basically self-reported on being a groomer, when again, that's probably not the case here, right? That is more than likely not the case. It might have just been, again, an impulsive situation, which is still something that you can, frown upon. However, I wouldn't, judge them too heavily for it. I would judge them, but just not too heavily. So here we have Florescent. I'm a very dry texter. Then we have the individual who made this document. It's fine, to be honest. You should be sleeping. Dry texting is the least of your or my concerns. Plus, I don't know how to be an interesting texter either. Maybe they should. Maybe Flora should. It's 4:30 a.m. You got school. You should see, okay, so they're acknowledging that the dynamic is pretty evident here. They're conversing. Like, this person is trying to get them to go to bed. Blah blah blah. There's really not much to say here, but the dynamic is already present. It'll become more visible as time goes on. If not, just make sure you get enough sleep. 8 hours. I don't think I'm doing either. Good night. Define either, because I listed 3 things: going to school, sleeping now, and getting 8 hours of bed. Which of these 3? Going to school or 3? Okay, I see. So they're neglecting going to school, even though this person's trying to convince them. Okay. So here we have. So are you sleeping now? Well, I hope you get a good sleep. Dream of me! Heart emoji. JK. What? You cannot be saying these things to a minor, even in jest. And Florescent's like, yes. This person is like, good night. Florescent's like, oh. They're like, unless, question mark, thinking emoji. Florescent, I prob will. Thinking emoji. Beat, question mark. E6, question mark. The highest, question mark. Look, what are the times on these? Okay, so these were like several hours apart, to be clear. Right? This was like, these were several hours later. Multiple hours later. And then they reply with, hi, kitten, exclamation point. Florescent's like, hi, :3. What you been up to? Going with Carrie, and I was in bed half the day. Queuing with Carrie, which would imply that they're playing Valorant at the time. They're saying, I hope you got a good rest. And then they repeat, eat, E6 highs. Fuck, this Florescent person is actually deranged, dude. They're so gross. Look at them. Like yes, they're the one, pushing this, but you shouldn't be reciprocating. Then what do you do in bed if you weren't, actively doing something in bed that's still resting? I don't know, I guess so. Also, I could see how this could be, a little bit suggestive of something else, right? Opening up a conversation for maybe, a sexual interaction. I wouldn't say that this is, definitively grooming just yet, but there's something weird here. Man, I'm so sad. If only a Korean woman could groom me. The fucking Tumblr. The Tumblr fucking keyboard spam. Apparently her net went out. Can't really do much about that. Who are they referring to? They're probably referring to, another person and a friend, how they mentioned earlier in the document, that Florescent would request to, quote-unquote, groom them. Also, I told you, I groom you if I see you working hard to improve yourself. Which is more like me being your therapist than a groomer, but same thing. Okay. Okay, pal. Okay. I just want you to succeed and be the best version of yourself, because working to improve yourself is attractive behavior. in my opinion, at least. Which again, you probably shouldn't be telling that to a minor at all. Florescent, I'm negative. What do you mean negative? Negativity wakes me up in the morning. What does negativity? Why does negativity wake you up in the morning? I wake up because my negativity tells me to. She calls her mommy. Hi, kitten. Dude, this is so evil. Hi, what are you doing? I'm in my bed, lonely, cold, bored. Why cold? Basement in Canada, so I have to work up over... Oh, basement in Canada, so I have to work up... warm up over like 20 minutes, I see. No heat. So they have no heat. Is there anything I can do to help with board part before you sleep? Why are you suggesting these things? I unfortunately cannot help with the lonely part since I'm literally on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, but... E-sex, question mark? Sorry, I queued... Okay. I queued with Carrie today. I'm not tired. That's fine, you don't have to queue with me. Don't feel obligated. Okay, so maybe they were just referring to playing a game on Valorant. But this person keeps heavily suggesting, like, you know, a form of flirting. Although they could also be joking, but given their behavior, I doubt it. Because they have a tendency of just, like, being, you know, very, very into sexual interaction. You need to behave yourself. And by behave yourself, I mean you need to work on improving yourself. And being groomed by you is, like, number one. Jesus Christ. I can guarantee you will be much happier and healthier and possibly get groomed by me. Fuck! So this person is, like, seriously depressing baiting. An adult should be able to see this, like, you know, so they should be able to, like, you know, identify this behavior and be like, no, you're being a complete fucking idiot. Get away from me and stop suggesting that I do anything with you, right? Like these type of, like, sympathy baits should not be working on anybody over the age of 18, in my opinion. Well, anybody over the age of 20, perhaps. Especially people, well, these are chronically online individuals, so disregard, or terminally online individuals. A lot of these interactions don't really seem like Florescent is being, like, very, very manipulative. They're being somewhat pushy, and they're obviously, like, they obviously have a dynamic here that seems to be sort of like, you know, they have this dynamic. They do have this sort of, like, dynamic where this person is taking on, like, a parental role, like, genuinely trying to, like, you know, look out for this Florescent person, but Florescent doesn't really care about, like, you know, any of the advice and just keeps wanting to open up a sexual interaction with this individual. And the fact that they're still reciprocating without, you know, the fact that they're still reciprocating is very, very gross to me. But it's pretty evident that Florescent is the one that keeps continuously engaging here, which is somewhat of a very bad sign, because you'd probably have to be in a very specific mental position, in a specific mental environment, so to speak, to really, like, you know, or you could just be like a very horny teenager to really, like, go out of your way to try to get an adult to quote unquote groom you. Although given, like, the context of these DMs, when I'm parsing through them, it doesn't seem like they mean groom as in, like, the way that you would typically know grooming. They're probably, like, Florescent is probably referring to it as in, like, they want to be in a relationship, right? They want to have, like, sexual interactions is what Florescent is probably suggesting here, not necessarily, like, grooming, right? That seems to be the case. So I guess this person didn't groom, but reciprocating some of these interactions in any way is incredibly reckless, in my opinion. Because this person, Florescent, is obviously not in a good mental place, and they could open themselves up, or they could have opened themselves up at the time to be taken advantage of by somebody with, you know, more malicious intents. So there's something negative going on here, very negative. Including the full text of my clarification, reply below. It appears that I left my room for people to jump to conclusions, so I would like to clarify some things. I did not make this statement to garner their sympathy or paint myself as a victim with zero responsibility of the events transpired. As I stated in the document, I am fully aware that some of the ways in which I conducted myself at the time is inexcusable regardless of context or whether I was emotionally manipulated into them. I had hoped that going public with my experiences would contribute to corroborating Flora's extremely manipulative and sexually inappropriate tendencies highlighted in Break's statements. Which it kind of does seem to be the case here. They are very pushy in the direction of being sexual, but it just seems like somewhat amicable interactions. I'm not entirely sure if you could call this assortment of Twitter DMs as expressly manipulative. Maybe they're doing, like, a sort of push-pull sort of thing where they can see how much they can take, measuring out the extent of, like, what they can do and get away with this individual, right? Like, to sort of open them up. Because if we actually do go to the assorted PDFs here, we can see, like, some discussions of them, you know, saying... Like they're not going to school, potentially trying to open the doors of, like, oh, no, you should go to school. And if you do go to school, I'll do this for you type of situation. Let's see. Let's take a look. Because this part right here stood out to me. Stop leaving me on scene. I'm going to commit. Right? I don't think that they're actually like suggesting that they're going to like legitimately commit suicide, right? Especially over text, this could be taken as a joke. Be pushy. I need to ruin me in every way possible. Then back here, please ruin me. Please ruin me. IRL. I will fly you out. Yeah, imagine you're like 20. You groom me. Very pushy, but where is the Esex? Hello? Esex? Question mark. I just don't see how a lot of this behavior is highly manipulative. There's probably the potential here for like, Florescent to be like, hey, if you do this for me, I'll go to school. I'll actually start behaving. But sort of like, tit for tat sort of situation here. However, it's not assertive enough. They're being pushy with what they want in terms of like sexual engagement, but it's not pushy enough where I can say that it's like definitively manipulative. It just has some like hints of it. So it doesn't really. So like these accounts don't really like prove that much in that direction. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing how there could be like some hints there. That being said, while I didn't get very close with Flor until early 2022, as I stated, I had already become friends with her the year prior through mutual friends and KVL. I never saw her as anything other than a friend, and I had absolutely no intent of getting into a relationship with her as an autistic individual who was an extremely sheltered growing... Okay. As an autistic individual who was extremely sheltered growing up, the sole intent of anything and everything I said was in hopes that she would listen to my advice if I delivered in that form. People always find a way. People always find a way to pull the autistic card in situations like these. It's hilarious to me. Finally, to make things very clear, absolutely nothing happened apart from these messages. Pretty much all of my friends at the time, including mutual friends of both me and Flor, can attest to this. I never met her in person, only ever VC'd on the rare occasions where we queued and ranked, and no explicit media was ever exchanged. Flor asking me to groom her, telling her how that actually is a bad thing, and her response that followed. Let me see. Does that mean you can groom me now? But like that would involve me like emotionally hurting you, gaslighting you, manipulating you, extorting you, blackmailing you, getting nudes and money out of you. I'd be downs. And I don't know, I have it in me to do that. But I would feel bad. Okay, you can groom me, but like without like some parts. They're obviously just referring to the fact that they want to have like a sexual interaction with an older woman. Such as, question mark, I don't know what you think, but I like to think this list is filled with negative things. The blackmailing and maybe the nudes. Only if you promise me that you will work on becoming a better person. And not wither away in sadness. Again, you shouldn't be reciprocating or tantalizing any of these, like, you shouldn't be tantalizing them in any way. You shouldn't be telling them that, like, perhaps we'll do this. At all. You shouldn't feel, like, bad for them either. If their life is in ruination, that is not your responsibility. That is not any of your concern. Again, it's hard to determine whether or not this is actually like also Florescent being manipulative or just being extremely pushy. Like, why are you not able to do anything? Because I'm depressed. I don't want to. Again, this could just genuinely be them giving like, their reason as to why they're not doing anything. They could actually be like, this could actually be genuinely them explaining their emotional state right now rather than them attempting to be manipulative. Oh, is there any way for you to get psych help? Like talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist? Maybe get some meds prescribed? No, I don't really want to go outside. Again, just a doomer individual with no capability of actually fleshing out their life or making any progress, working on themselves. Blah, 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 blah. This is all too common. We've seen this before. It will help though, trust me. Or maybe talk to a licensed therapist through an online service. Those exist. I think I just talk to you instead. That works, but I'm not a licensed therapist, and I cannot guarantee what I tell you is going to help. Plus, I cannot prescribe you depression medication, which in my case helped tons in managing depression. This person does not care to actually improve their life. They clearly just want to open up a situation where they can actually engage sexually with what I believe is an older woman. My mom probably won't let me. She doesn't believe in that. Okay, great job. Typical Asian families. Amazing stuff. Health professional will decide if you are capable of making your own decision. They might make you sign a consent form. There is no hard and fast rule about how old or mature you have to be. Generally, you must be more mature to make more important decisions. For example, if you are 16 years old and want to get birth control, your doctor may decide that you are capable of making the decision yourself without your parents. If you are 14 years old and need... Okay, that's them, quoting something in terms of Canadian healthcare. In short, You can consent for yourself as long as you don't have like any mental impairment that may obfuscate your decision making. Plus, every patient has a right to medical secrecy. I mean, yeah, they're being pretty straightforward, and it appears that they're trying to like dodge some of these advancements. Again, but however, this is like not. This all gives enough like benefit of the doubt. There is just enough benefit of the doubt and plausible deniability in all of these texts, like being showcased here, where it's incredibly difficult to determine whether or not this is actually indicative of manipulation. I could see how again there might be flavors of it, how there might be like a positioning here to open up into potentially manipulative behavior. Oh, well, I have to wait for the rice purity test and the cup size before I sleep. You don't want to ruin my sleep schedule even more, do you? Again, there is the potential here. There is the potential here for there be to like some attempt to open a door into manipulation, yes. However, could I call this definitively manipulative? I'm unsure. I mean, this could have been the beginning of like their more manipulative behavior as they went on to become like more of a teenager. Because in 2022, them being 18 right now, this being 3 years ago, this would have been when they were 15, right? So to be clear, or maybe 14, depending on where their birthday falls. I mean, again, this could have been like the beginning of them in like their early teenage years, right? Getting more into the idea, but this again would have occurred while they were in a relationship with Brick as well. I mean, I can kind of see somebody could definitely argue that this could be a level of manipulation. However, for this person to claim as an adult that they were going to be manipulated by a minor is absolutely hilarious to think about. And it just doesn't seem like, like be so for real right now. Like let's be so real right now. Yeah, this would have been around the time when Brick and this individual Ava would have been dating. Come on, this woman is 9 years older than you. 3. It is a literal felony. 3. What about her do you miss? She's nice? I thought you meant your ex, not blank. Please do not allow yourself to get groomed or taken advantage of as a minor. Whoa, she's an angel. No grooming. Literally coming from a victim. Oh my god, these people are so reprehensible, dude. Bro, please. Help me not let her get groomed. Like, actually, they're talking about not letting her get groomed. Not letting Florescent get groomed. Because, apparently they've been going around to multiple people trying to engage in these, like, sexual interactions. And then that's that tweet that they posted they were referring to earlier. Please marry me at... Please marry me, choose one. Minor, hey. Sorry. Okay. I do not like the fact that they were having these interactions with what appears to be Florescent in these, I believe this is Florescent's account. In these DMs. Before I get ambushed again, I don't know how to tell Ava without hurting her feelings, but I'm, like, getting pretty uncomfortable. Okay, so they're offering some corroboration here that it was definitely not their intent to actually, like, engage in any sort of grooming or grooming adjacent type of behavior with Florescent. Speaking of 19-year-olds being weird to me, when I was, like, barely 15 and tried breaking up with a girl again and ghosting her, a 19-year-old tried grooming me and said weird things to me. I see. This is pretty manipulative. Yeah, this is referring to the person who wrote this document. Okay, unless there's like a lot more context missing here, the way that it's being presented, and it is incredibly one-sided to be clear, so we don't fully understand the dynamics of like how these conversations were going on. It appears that Pun was like this Florescent individual is seriously attempting to like manipulate a narrative here to try to like sympathy bait, because based on the text messages that we saw and the interactions that we saw, what Florescent is saying here does not seem to be the case. Wasn't someone like that your Astral Clashland? Yes, it was her. It was her. Who? She's friends with Blank in her whole circle. Who is she? So that's kind of when I drifted from Blank because Blank knows. I think, based on the interactions that we saw, at least the messages that we saw, even though there could be significantly more that's just not being displayed here, given like the length of time that these people could have been friends and how many like DMs could have been exchanged in between this time and all the way back here. Blah 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 blah. It's possible that more could have gone on, but based on what's being presented in this document, It appears that Florescent is being incredibly dishonest. Flora tweeting a photo of an ex in her bed without consent. Sends her privacy. She's under a blanket, only the back of her head and upper back are shown. Okay, thank fucking God. That's still pretty gross, though. Behavior is in line with her tendency to ignore / disregard consent. Okay. So what's the verdict on this quick document that we just went over? In regards to, like, you know, the current Valorant allegations? Florescent is a very dishonest, potentially manipulative, or at least has some manipulative tendencies. Florescent is definitely a very sex-pesty, very pushy, sex-obsessed freak with very little impulse control. And will attempt to engage in sexual interaction with just about anybody that they find appealing in any way, is what I've gathered from this. And this individual is completely reckless. The individual who's written, you know, who wrote this document is completely reckless for even entertaining a conversation that could even go in this direction in the first place.